Try this again. Hello, hello, friends. Happy Thursday. Welcome to this quick live stream that was inspired by, of course, a client call. So I'm going to get this shared. I'm going to let people get notified and join us. And I think this topic is actually really important for us to talk about, especially as we head into a new year. Get this shared over in the Mind Power Collective. All right. So if you're here, say hello. Hi, Lisa. Hello, hello. So as with many of my posts and videos and things that I do, this topic was inspired by a recent call that I had with a client. And it was all about really understanding why or how we create change in our life. And for a lot of us, until we know better, right? Until we know better, many of us actually don't think in terms or in the right terms in terms of creating the changes that we want to make. What we typically think about is stopping, avoiding, distracting ourselves from some particular thing. So the title of this live stream is about avoiding pain, right? Avoiding pain is not the same as seeking pleasure. And I want to explain that, but it doesn't just fall into the category of pain and pleasure. This, relates to money and love and peace and chaos and joy and happiness. So if you think about this idea of many of us go through our lives avoiding pain, like trying to avoid failure. Well, trying to avoid failure, if that is where your mind is set, if that is where all of your energy is flowing to, if that is where you are focusing your, time and energy and attention, all you're doing is saying, I don't want to fail. But that doesn't guarantee that you're going to succeed because the energy, the mindset, the actions that you need to avoid failure don't necessarily create success. Those are two completely different conversations. Those are two completely different paths, right? But what tends to happen is most of us move through life trying to create changes because we don't like what we have and we're trying to avoid it. We're trying to leave it. We're trying to fight it. We're trying to resist it instead of focusing on what it is that we actually want. So those of us who are afraid of debt, or I grew up, after I got out of college, one of my big key things was I didn't want to struggle financially. Like I wanted to get out of school and I wanted to have a good job and know that I could pay my bills. But for a good portion of my 20s, that was my focus. I just wanted to be able to pay my bills. I didn't want, right? I was avoiding financial struggle. Do you think that meant that I was actually like abundant? Do you think that I had more than enough money? No, I had just enough because I wasn't thinking in alignment with what it is that I actually wanted. I was thinking in alignment with what I didn't want. I didn't want struggle. And while I didn't quite have struggle in the way that I was trying to avoid it, I didn't have the joy. I didn't have the ease. I didn't have the thing that I actually wanted. The same thing happens when people are trying to lose weight or they're trying to change their career or they're trying to, get into a relationship. They spend so much of their time and energy and mindset trying to avoid, steer clear from, right? Like we're trying to get out of or get away from this particular habit, but that's not the same as creating health. Trying to just get in the gym and stop eating the way that you are eating or whatever doesn't mean that you're going to be healthy, right? So when we're trying to avoid something, we're not naturally seeking that other thing. And the reason this is important is because the outcome that you have from each is going to be completely different. So let's go back to the failure and success model. Those of us who are trying to avoid failure, the energy, the action, the mindset behind avoiding failure means you're not taking risks. You're probably not putting yourself out there in that way. You're probably not a person that's investing in yourself because you're afraid that it's not going to work. You're probably not a person who is, being willing to kind of put yourself out there in a way or be visible or start a business because you don't want to fail and you're trying to avoid failure. Whereas the person who is seeking success is thinking in a much more expansive way. So let's talk about, again, the energy. Someone who is avoiding failure is thinking and living in a very small way. If you're trying to avoid failure, you are constantly like looking out for danger. You are thinking potentially that that thing's not going to work out. You're living in a very small, shrunken world. You're thinking, small thoughts about yourself. You're taking small actions. You're not doing certain things that would take you to that growth level because there's potential for in your mind for failure. So you're avoiding that. So it's very shrunken down. It's very like enclosed. You're pulled back. So you're avoiding failure. But when you're seeking success, there is like, it's like a big wide open field. Energetically speaking, you are open. Your mind is open to think differently. Your energy is open to take different opportunities, right? You're more inspired to try this thing. You're more likely to invest in the business, in learning how to do something, and working with a mentor or a coach. You're more likely to do those things because you're seeking success. Is there the potential for failure in that role? Of course. So if your mindset is set on, I'm going to avoid failure, it is not set for success. Does that make sense? And this is the piece that I think gets people stuck more often than anything. They're focused on avoiding some negative emotion, feeling, experience. And they think because they're living in that way, that they're actually on this sort of other side, that they're like in alignment with those things. But you're not. You're not in alignment with success if you're avoiding failure. You're not in alignment with peace when you're avoiding chaos. You're not in alignment with ease when you're trying to avoid struggle. Because the energy in that is focused solely on keeping your feelers out for where you may fall, for where that person might get to you, for where that person might screw you over, or that situation may, come tumbling down. Whereas when your mind is set for that expansion, you're constantly thinking, you're constantly open, you're constantly being inspired, and you're taking action and moving through your challenges in a much more growth way, like a growth mindset way, versus feeling stuck in this other area. And there is a huge difference between the two. So today I want you to actually think about the things that you want, the feelings you want to create, the experiences that you want, the intentions and goals and I guess you could call them resolutions, whatever you want to call them. Think about what those are for you for 2022. And then I want you to ask yourself, are you going into this year, are you going into this aspect of your life from the position of, I'm trying to avoid this pain, heartache, illness? Ooh, let's talk about that. Let's talk about health for just a second. Those of us who are trying to avoid or steer clear of illness are focused on illness. Those of us who are aimed at reaching for health are more likely to have health. Those of us who are trying to avoid that feeling of fear in any area of our lives, we're not the same. We're not doing the same things as we would if we were leaning toward courage. Do you see the difference? There's a completely different energy, like pathway, choices that you're making, thoughts that you're thinking, when you're avoiding something and like seeking something else. Because you wouldn't say that you're seeking fear because you think that you're avoiding it, but your focus, your intention is all around fear. That's what you're focused on. That is what you're seeing. That is what you're creating. That is what you are avoiding. So we really have to start thinking, am I trying to avoid something, or am I actually leaning into the expansion of creating this thing? So as you're thinking about what you want to create in 2022, what you want to change, your intentions, your resolutions, whatever you want to call them, I want you to ask yourself, am I really coming at this from a place of avoidance, or am I coming at it from a place of open expansion, seeking what it is that I actually want? Because those two things are not the same. And the outcomes for each are going to be drastically different. And I guarantee if what you want is massive abundance, but you're avoiding, financial trauma and drama, if that is your focus, you're not going to be able to live into that abundance. It's just not going to happen for you because you're constantly focused on the potential drama. Does that make sense? If you have questions about that, feel free to post them below. And I really want to also remind you about how this works and why this matters. Not only does our mindset have an effect on everything, so how you're thinking, where you're focusing is huge, but in addition to that, energetically, what you're doing is you're basically putting, like if you had a balance, like a scale, right? Your focus and your attention is constantly putting like a stone or a weight in this thing that you don't want, this thing that you're trying to avoid. So what ends up happening is you see it more often. You feel it more often. You're constantly like dodging it and trying to avoid it more often. So you're actually kind of manifesting more of that versus the thing that you actually want. So I want you to think in terms of what is it that you actually want, and in what way could you possibly be trying to avoid the opposite? And if you're having challenges with that, if you're not quite sure how that might be coming up, if you are having some habits that are related to I'm avoiding pain and heartache and financial ruin and failure, right? Then it's time to start really thinking about, well, how can I turn my focus? How can I shift my mindset? How can I start doing things differently from the place of seeking that thing that I actually want, feeling the energy of that thing that I actually want, living from the place of that place, like that thing that I actually want, the abundance, the peace, the love, the ease, versus avoiding all of the negative. Does that make sense? So I hope this is helpful for you. This is a critical piece of this whole mindset energy action puzzle. It's something that a lot of people don't realize, and when I work with a client and we can kind of point that out, it's a very small like shift that needs to happen, but it makes a huge difference. Okay, so I want you to start looking at that in your own life. And if you're struggling with this, if you're thinking you're on the right track, but things aren't actually shifting for you, like you're doing all the things, you're taking all the action, but you're not seeing the shift, or you're not taking enough action because you're overthinking everything, then that's some work for, maybe a mentor or a mindset coach to really help you through, because there's some mindset stuff that's going on, some misalignment. If that is the case for you, and you want to explore what this, one-on-one coaching thing is all about and how it can support you in creating what it is that you want to seek and achieve and create in 2022, then feel free to send me a message. Let's get you scheduled for a free consultation and we can talk about that. But in the meantime, I want you to really think about this. Are you avoiding or are you seeking? And see what comes up for you. Small shifts daily are going to make a huge difference, but I do want you to look at that, okay? It's going to make a huge difference in your life. It's going to make a huge difference in what you achieve in 2022. And like I said, if you're looking for support or are curious about what coaching can do for you, feel free to reach out and let's have a chat, okay? I hope you guys are having a fabulous week and a good holiday season. If you guys have questions for me, feel free to send them my way. And in the meantime, I will talk to you soon. All right, bye guys.